Are we on the verge of a third world war? A look back at the extremely serious events of the last 48 hours. Ukraine used British long-range Storm Shadow missiles in Russia. Ukraine has used British long-range Storm Shadow missiles against Russian territory for the first time after obtaining permission from London, British media reported on Wednesday. Several Storm Shadow missiles, which have a range of more than 250 kilometers, were launched at least one Russian military target, the Financial Times reported. Kiev had long demanded permission to use the weapons, but the West feared Moscow's reaction, which presented it as a red line. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman ordered Live not to comment on missile attack in Ukraine. A Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman was instructed at a press conference not to comment on the strike on the Ukrainian city of Dnipro, which Kiev said was carried out on Thursday with an intercontinental missile. Maria Zakharova was interrupted by a phone call, as shown in the official video of this briefing, broadcast live on YouTube by the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. A deep voice can then be heard speaking to her on the other end of the line, regarding the ballistic missile strike on the Yuzhmash plant, which the West has started to talk about. "Do not comment at all," said her unidentified interlocutor, who did not mention an intercontinental missile. Russian intercontinental missile. Extremely serious if confirmed, according to French diplomacy. A Russian intercontinental missile launch on Ukraine would be an extremely serious event if it were confirmed. The spokesperson for the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs estimated this Thursday. "It is obvious that if this launch were confirmed, it would be an extremely serious event, and it would above all be a continuation of Russia's escalatory attitude," said Christophe Lemoyne, while stressing that at this stage France had not had confirmation of such a launch. Russia fired an experimental medium-range missile at Ukraine, according to the US. Russia fired an experimental medium-range ballistic missile at Ukraine, and not an intercontinental missile, a senior US official said on Thursday, in a statement sent to AFP. Moscow is seeking to intimidate Ukraine and the countries that support it by using this weapon, or to attract attention, but it will not change the situation in this conflict, he said. London, for its part, is talking about a ballistic missile with a range of several thousand kilometers. Russia has used for the first time in Ukraine a ballistic missile with a range of several thousand kilometers, said this Thursday the spokesman for British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. "This is obviously very worrying and constitutes a new example of Russia's irresponsible behavior, which only strengthens our determination to support Ukraine for as long as it takes," he added to the press, without specifying whether it was an intercontinental missile as claimed by Kiev. The Russian Ministry of Defense announced that it had shot down two British-made Storm Shadow cruise missiles fired by Ukraine, which were targeting its territory, without specifying the place or time of this interception. British media had announced on Wednesday that Kiev had used these long-range missiles for the first time after obtaining authorization from London. Vladimir Putin confirms hitting Ukraine with new ballistic missile. Russian President Vladimir Putin confirmed Thursday that his forces have struck Ukraine with a new medium-range ballistic missile, referring to the Russian launch on the city of Dnipro, which did not carry a nuclear warhead. Earlier in the day, the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman was told live during a press conference not to comment on the attack. "Our engineers called it Oreshnik," Putin said in an address to the nation. According to him, the strike targeted a site of the Ukrainian military-industrial complex. Vladimir Putin announces that his country is ready for all scenarios in the conflict between it and Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin assured Thursday during an address to the nation that his country is ready for all scenarios in the conflict between it and Ukraine and its Western allies. "We have always been ready, and we still are, to solve all problems by peaceful means, but we are also ready to face any developments," he said in the speech broadcast on Russian television. "If anyone still doubts this, it is useless. There will always be an answer," he warned. Russia does not rule out striking countries whose weapons Ukraine uses against Russian territory. Russia does not rule out striking countries whose weapons Ukraine uses against Russian territory, President Vladimir Putin warned on Thursday, after such Ukrainian attacks carried out, according to Moscow, with American and British missiles. "We consider it our right to use our weapons against the military installations of countries that allow the use of their weapons against our installations, and in the event of an escalation of aggressive actions, we will respond just as strongly, he said in a surprise address to the nation. Moscow's use of a new ballistic missile is a worrying development, says the UN. Moscow's use of a new medium-range ballistic missile to strike Ukraine is a worrying new development, said the spokesman for the UN Secretary-General, Stefan Dujarric, on Thursday. Speaking to the press, Stefan Dujarric called on both sides to take urgent steps towards de-escalation to ensure the protection of civilians and critical civilian infrastructure, repeating Secretary-General Antonio Guterres' call for an end to this war in accordance with international law. Moscow must reconsider the escalatory involvement of North Korean soldiers, according to Paris. The deployment of North Korean soldiers alongside Russia is a game-changer, French Armed Forces Minister Sébastien Lecornu said on Thursday, calling on Moscow not to think that the West will let this go and to reconsider its position. Vladimir Putin can change things by reconsidering his position on North Korea, but it's an escalation, and obviously, we're going to have to fight against this escalation by all means, said Sébastien Lecornu on the CNN News channel. Russia warned the United States about a hypersonic missile launch on Ukraine. Russia warned the United States 30 minutes before its hypersonic ballistic missile launch on Ukraine, the Kremlin spokesman said Thursday, quoted by Russian news agencies. The alert was sent automatically 30 minutes before the launch, Dmitry Peskov said, specifying that Moscow maintained constant communication with the United States on the issue of nuclear weapons. Russia is provoking the escalation in Ukraine, according to the White House. Russia is provoking the escalation in Ukraine, the White House spokeswoman said Thursday, while Moscow accuses Washington of worsening the conflict by authorizing the Ukrainian army to strike deep into Russian territory. The major escalation is that Russia is turning to another country, added Karine Jean-Pierre, referring to the fact that North Korean soldiers are now fighting against Ukraine. On November 17, Washington authorized Ukraine to strike Russian territory with long-range missiles supplied by the United States, thus granting a long-standing request from Kiev. In response, Moscow on November 18 said it would provide an appropriate response on the battlefield to any firing by Ukraine of American long-range missiles on its territory. Missiles, anti-personnel mines, atomic weapons, the inevitable escalation between Ukraine and Russia. After Joe Biden's green light, Ukraine fired an ATACMS missile on Russian territory. Vladimir Putin responded by brandishing the nuclear threat, and yesterday the United States announced that it was providing Ukraine with non-persistent anti-personnel mines. Read our full article below. For Vladimir Putin, is the nuclear bomb a bluffing instrument? Nicholas Tenzer, geopolitician and professor at Sciences Po, returns to the announcement of the United States to authorize Ukraine to use long-range missiles to defend itself. Now Vladimir Putin is once again raising the specter of resorting to nuclear weapons. Make the background music dramatic.